People always talk about somebody will throw the race card up on the table or they're race baiters or whatever. And you do exactly the opposite. You're trying to get it off the table. You're not in there trying to play the race card. You're saying, oh, I'm wanting to see even playing field.
Yeah.
All I want you to recognize is I have a mother here that has lost a child. A child. She held that child just like you held your child. She took pride in that child. She laughed. She giggled with that child. And she's now crying over that child. I know when we had Trayvon's mother here, we had Ahmaud Arbery's mother, listening and seeing you interact, you would see the audience change and move because they realize, but for the grace of God go I. It's a mother-son. It's not anything different. It's just the same. And you have to do all the work to get there before you even start dealing with the facts.
And it's so interesting. I was here in Los Angeles, and yesterday we were having a press conference where this man and this woman got killed horribly. The police were pursuing in a high-speed pursuit case, and it was over a traffic stop. They said the guy was speeding, and they did a 70-mile-per-hour high-speed chase through South Central, the Black community in Los Angeles, and killed these two innocent people who were just driving through the intersection. And the one thing I kept saying to myself, Dr. Phil, is this isn't just about the Harris family, who was the woman in the car, or the Keys family, the man in the car. This is about every citizen in Los Angeles, California, because but by the grace of God, that could have been anybody who was just innocently driving down the road. And we kept making the point, when you look at the statistics, they seem to engage in these high-speed pursuits more in the Black community than other communities. And so how can we get them to see what's the crux of the matter? You got to put them in the shoes of saying, well, what happens if you were driving down the road that day and you just happened to be in a section of town that the police say, we don't follow our own policies because they are irrelevant or they insignificant. That's over and over what you're trying to do is say, just at least for a second, give consideration to the other side of the coin.
Yeah, the collateral risk here is the same as the collateral risk in Beverly Hills or Bel Air.
Yep.
You got to weigh it the same.
Yes,
the
sir.
Human life's a human life.
A human life is human life. Yep.
When you decided to really commit your life to this and start representing these people that had no way to navigate the terrain, it had to feel right when you stepped into it. It had to feel right, but you had to feel pressure too, because these people, when you show up and take their case, you're it for them. We know that the church is often the center of the Black community and they have that support. But in terms of fighting back in the system, it's Ben Crump.
You know, it's to whom much is given, much is expected. And I do feel that way. I tell you, Dr. Phil, and this gets kind of deep, and this is why I probably need to talk to you more, my friend. People often ask me, how do you deal with it being all of the stress of the constant death and loss and tragedy of it all? And I would say, because I study history and I studied Thurgood Marshall, my personal hero, and he would talk about how you have to compartmentalize stuff because you can't give way to emotion when you're there with the families trying to be strong for everybody and make sense out of something that makes no sense at all, that they're going to now have to bury their child who were killed by people who were supposed to protect them in many cases. And so I'm trying to be strong and I'm compartmentalizing because, as Justice Marshall said, if you're not strong and trying to keep it together to get justice, then you can't prevent some of the future injustices from happening, some of the future hashtags, the next Trayvon's and George Floyd's. And so I keep trying to compartmentalize, but in this Netflix documentary where they kept the camera on me, the director did a good thing of showing vulnerable moments of when I was by myself after we had met with the families, and I found myself, Dr. Phil, and I never knew this. I found myself always just rubbing my head and rubbing my temples and so forth, and I kinda conclude that must be, the physical manifestation of the mental anguish from yet talking to another family who is doing stuff through the natural order of unnatural order of things where they're having to bury their children. No parent, and I've seen it 100 times. You just don't even fathom that. You know it's possible, but you always believe your children are going to bury you in your heart.
Yeah, I always tell them, everyone that you've brought here and allowed us to tell the story, first thing I always say to them is, one thing you won't hear me say is, I know how you feel. Because if you haven't been there and buried a child, you can't know. You can empathize as best you can, but you can't know what they're going through. How much they blame themselves, how much they feel like, if I had just said, they play the what if game. What if I had taken Trayvon to the store? What if I had picked up some things for him before? What if I had done this? What if I'd have done that? What if we lived somewhere? They play the what if game till it drives them crazy. You can get them a verdict, you can get them a judgment, you can get them a settlement, but you can't get them justice. You can just get them some measure.
Accountability, yeah.
You can't get that child back for them, and it helps, and you gotta feel good when you do, and I know they do. They feel like they've somehow pushed back and made somebody be accountable. You know, it was February 26th of 2012 when Trayvon Martin was killed by George Zimmerman, and he was just 17 years old. So it has been 10 years since that happened. That case changed you. Why did it change you so much?
You know, the reason Trayvon changed me, as I've often said, Dr. Phil, is, and this is a very hard pill to swallow. Most black people in America had, even though we hadn't gotten used to it, we had become accustomed to the police could kill our children, and they often got away with it. But with Trayvon and this stand your ground law, it said any Tom, Dick, or Harry could kill our children. But as long as they said, oh, I felt in fear of my life, the law said you can go home and sleep in your bed at night. And you said, man, hold on. How is it you can kill my child who's unarmed and your word is the gospel and you get to go and sleep in your bed at night? That, I think, was what made Trayvon Martin this global phenomenon where people say that's a bridge too far, America. You can't, at some point, you gotta say, our children get the right to get equal justice too. Because we just all said if the racial dynamics were different, and that was a young 17-year-old white kid, there is no way his killer would have got to go home and sleep in his bed at night.
You know, 2 years later, Tamir Rice was shot and killed in Cleveland, Ohio, and he was, what, 12?
12 years old,
12 years old.
playing in the playground by himself.
Yeah.
And you look at that video, the police rolled up on him in less than 1.5 seconds. They rolled down the window and shot that kid. Nobody went to jail. Nobody was charged. I mean, it's enough to make you want to holler when you think about it.
Pretty hard to imagine a second and a half and a child is dead on a playground. Now, he was holding a toy gun, but these are difficult times when that is the default response. What do you say to yourself about that?
Well, what it tells me is we got to go fight harder because what I believe in my heart, and I will believe it until the day I die, we will win this war for liberty and justice for all. The enemies of equality will not win this war. It's the only thing that keeps me going. I believe that we are gonna have a better world for all our children.